Welcome, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Emily Berry. I'm a health services specialist with Geisinger's Health and Wellness team. Today, we have Katie Mallman from the Center of Wellbeing, which is Geisinger's internal employee resource for mental well-being. So I'm really excited to be here and to spend some time talking about something that affects us all, which is, mental health, stress, and sometimes even burnout. So we hear these terms a lot, especially within the workplace. Many of us are juggling work, life, family, all these other responsibilities, and we often don't stop to check in with how we're really doing sometimes until we feel completely overwhelmed sometimes. So today isn't about having all the answers or fixing everything at once. It's really about building awareness, learning how to recognize stress, understanding what burnout can look like, and exploring small, realistic ways to support our mental well being in everyday life. So I'm really glad to be joined by Katie today, who is going to help us break this all down in a way that feels, practical and also relatable. So welcome, Katie, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. So, to kick us off here, I feel like we hear the term mental health a lot more now than we used to, which can be encouraging, but at the same time, it could sometimes feel a little unclear or vague. People might often ask themselves questions like, am I really doing okay mentally? Or what does taking care of my mental health really look like, especially when nothing necessarily feels wrong on the surface. So, my first question for you is, what does building a healthier mind actually look like in everyday life, not just when things get really hard?
Yeah, so every day is going to be really different, but if you're intentional about your well-being, I think your mind's going to be healthier. It starts with being okay, with focusing on yourself. Areas of focus when we're talking about individual well-being include your physical, spiritual, occupational, education, environmental, intellectual, and social well-being. I've always encouraged patients and clients to consider kind of fulfilling these areas in their life to meet their own preferences. So if you can kind of go through and say, okay, this is how I like to fill these areas. I know I can rely back on these activities to do that. Things are going to get hard, but they may not get really hard, as you mentioned, when you're feeling really positive about yourself and when you have a good foundation for your own well-being framework.
I like that you framed it up as, creating that strong foundation because it makes mental health feel a little bit more like an everyday practice. So, this idea of being fine comes up a lot. I hear it from coworkers, friends. I've said it myself, but when you pause and you dig a little deeper, many people still feel exhausted or overwhelmed, or they're just pushing through the day instead of actually feeling well. What are some signs our mental health might need just a little bit more attention, even if we're telling ourselves that we are fine?
Yeah, we hear that so often, right? I'm fine.
Yes.
So the word, yeah. So the word fine is often used, believe it or not, to help us avoid painful feelings. Just by saying positive things to ourselves, we can often feel better. So when you're saying fine, I'm fine, it does actually help your brain to believe that you're fine in that moment. But yeah, there's still a lot of pain underneath there. So oftentimes, like you're asking about symptoms or what is it telling us? You'll feel it in your body, whether it's in your gut or pressure on your mind, like a headache, joint pain, tension. I get pain in my neck. It could be your immune system or increased blood pressure. Irritability, frustration, depression, sadness, anxiety can also be warning signs of something psychological. We often pass off these symptoms as medical issues, when really it's a stressor. These are all the ways our body tries to guard us off against injury or pain. So the point really here is to listen to your body, because it's not always your mind telling you that there's something off.
Yeah. I think that really stands out, especially the idea that stress doesn't always show up as a thought first. And I know for me, it shows when I clench my teeth, but I feel like that's my thing where I'm like, okay, I need to take a step back.
We find that a lot.
Yes.
Mhm.
And I think stress has become, such a normal part of life and work. And it can be hard to know what's considered to be normal anymore. A lot of people feel stressed every day and assume that's just, part of being busy. But sometimes that stress can sometimes, cross a line. So, how can we tell the difference between just more normal stress versus burning out or burnout?
Yeah, good question. So stress typically stems from something external, so an external circumstance, and it would typically go away once we recognize that we're safe. You're not stressed anymore, right? You're like, oh, good, that's over. That could be a deadline, a chronic illness, or more other even long-term situations can also cause stress. In healthcare, we see this a lot with a challenging patient on a unit, with very challenging, difficult discharge. We kind of go in more stressed until that patient leaves, and then we're like, oh, back to normal, back to our usual state of stress, right? Where burnout, it really looks more depleted than a normal stressful day. With burnout, you're going to feel cynicism or detachment, exhaustion, often lacking a sense of accomplishment, even if you're completing the tasks that you wanted to complete. You might not feel successful, even though you've just been, you did all the things that you set out to do. And you might even notice that your pleasure senses are down, or maybe you're calling out of work, avoiding things that you might not typically, that you typically would enjoy.
Yeah. I think that's, a really clear way to put it, especially when you think about how burnout can not affect just your productivity, but also your enjoyment and your motivation. And I think what makes burnout especially tricky is that it just doesn't happen all at once.
Right.
It tends to sneak up slowly
Mm-hmm.
while you're doing your best. You're showing up, you're helping others, you're getting things done, and often without realizing how depleted you may be becoming. What are some signs of burnout that we tend to brush off or think they're just normal? And how can we start paying better attention to them?
Yeah, so with burnout, they kind of you can kind of look at the symptoms into two different kind of categories, if you will, or some the symptoms into two different categories. One would be more arousal. These are things that you may call someone you may call an energy vampire. People who kind of complain and find negativity in just about anything and everything. They may be more aggressive in their speech, their behaviors. And then you have depressive symptoms, and they may look more like shut down, lacking engagement, flat affect. And oftentimes you may have symptoms of both. So you may be electrically charged up and then also be, crying in a closet. So it's not just one or the other. Additionally, our own peers may become more threatening to you as you become more symptomatic. You may start comparing what you feel inside with what you see on their outsides. So that kind of may look like jealousy or territorial, if you will.
Yeah, and I think that's an important reminder, right? Burnout doesn't look the same person to person. It might be different, and it's very interesting. Like, thank you for your insights on that. I think, when people hear work on your mental health, it can feel overwhelming, like one more thing to add to that already full plate. Many people want to take care of themselves but aren't sure realistically like where that fits into their busy schedule or their full workday. There's just so much going on. It's just, another thing to think about. What are a few realistic day-to-day habits that people can use to support their mental well-being, even when life or work feels really busy?
Yeah, so, many successful people, they start their day by completing a task. And that's, habit forming. So whether it's making the bed or like me, I like emptying the dishwasher. I don't know what that is about, but and then, I know I don't have to come home and do it after work either. So that always feels really good to me. And it kind of jump starts my morning with those habit forming tasks, if you will. Finding time every day to move, whether it's going for a walk, doing floor exercises, are all great ways to support your well-being. Habit stacking, I should add, is a great thing. So if you already have a habit, you can add it right after it, and it kind of leads right into the next. If you work from home, you can incorporate chair yoga into your routine. I noticed just talking to a lot of staff members that work from home that you're not always taking a lunch break. You're sitting in front of the computer and still eating. So take the lunch, right? It's there for you. Step away from the work. It's good for you to walk outside, smell the flowers, eat, and step away from the computer. Again, really just being intentional and aware are great places to start. I'll tell you, from the time I was a little kid, my dad insisted he would look in the mirror every morning and say out loud, "You're a lucky guy." Now, this guy got up before the sun got up every day, and he worked into the evening. He was blue collar, worked in the lumber yard, and I cannot recall a day that he ever felt down in his life. So, it's really, we believe what we tell ourselves. So if you tell yourself kind things, your body and your mind are going to be kind to you. So be kind to yourself.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a great example. And I think I love the idea of starting with small intentional actions as well, because those are often, habits that we're more likely to stick with. And I think personally for me, I find, taking a walk or a short break can really help me throughout the workday, even if it's for like a minute or two.
Mhm.
Especially if the sun is shining, I could spend a few minutes outside if it allows, but the sun definitely can help. And I
Emily,
know,
everybody has a minute, right? Like, no matter,
yeah.
you have a minute somewhere in your day. So trying to find that minute really is helpful to
Mhm.
just take it and know that that you're doing that for yourself. It
Yeah.
helps because then you're doing it for others too, because you're taking care of yourself. You're going to be better coming back into your work.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
can completely agree. And I know there's moments where, stress can hit fast. Maybe it's in a meeting, it's between emails, just something comes up at the end of a really long day. I feel like we've all been there, and it's a time when you feel like you don't need or have time for anything this complicated. And you might be looking for something to help that helps right then, right there. What is one simple thing someone can do in the moment to calm their mind or body when stress shows up like that?
Yeah, so this is a really great question that comes up a lot in my work. And there are so many things that you can try. In the mental health world, we refer to these as grounding techniques. I'm going to show you a quick box breathing exercise that I learned back 15 years ago when I started in healthcare. And I say, find a square anywhere and breathe through it. So for all of us here on the screen, it's very simple. You'll start in the upper left-hand corner and simply breathe in and follow your eyes across the screen and out the side. In the bottom and out the side. And you're going to continue that until you notice that your breathing is stable. And that's when your mind should be clearer as well. If you can regulate your breathing, you can stay in that driver's seat of your emotions and stabilize your stress response. So again, just being intentional, doing something gives you back the control over that stressor that's been bothering you.
Yeah. I think that's really helpful. I think especially for those moments where it does show up quick and you just need something right in the moment that can help you cope or manage with it. I never heard of the box breathing before, but I think it's something I would give a try if I was feeling stress creeping up on
Yeah,
me. So thank you for that.
you're welcome.
Of course. Yeah. So
Enjoy.
we
I've been
we
into
hear a lot.
mindfulness.
So, yes, I love mindfulness. So we hear a lot about setting boundaries, but in reality, many people might feel, a little bit guilty about taking breaks or saying no or logging off. Like I know I've even stayed on longer than I probably should have at work. It can feel uncomfortable or selfish, even when you know that that balance is needed.
Yeah.
Can you explain the role of boundaries in mental well-being and how someone can start setting them without guilt?
Hmm. Can I have a minute to think about that?
Yeah, of course. Take your time.
Yeah, yeah, I apologize. I am having a hard time with that question. Can we move on to the next?
Yeah, we
See,
can move right on to the next question. We'll revisit that another time.
just kidding. I'll come back to the question, but that's how easy it is to set a boundary, right? If you take a minute and recognize that you are not comfortable with something, and you take a minute and you don't even have to ask for permission. You can just say, I'm taking a minute. I'll come back to it, right? And just like I did, you can always follow up with, well, let me look at my schedule and get back to you. When somebody asks you, can you do something? Well, I'll take a look at that. So really, it's being honest with yourself is key. And then being honest with others will allow you to set more firm boundaries. Additionally, I always encourage turning off notifications on your phone when you're taking time off. There's no need to be in the know. And if you need to know, I assure you, they will find you, right? They always do. And the last thing you really need to do is have that quick dose. For those of you that work for Geisinger, the quick dose buzzing you awake every morning when you're trying to sleep in. I know that my watch goes off, my phone goes off every morning at 6:30, and I know it's the quick dose. But on my days off, I'd rather not hear it. So turning those notifications off, there's no need to have them on. And you can always let your team, your supervisor know, hey, I'm going to be away this weekend. If there's something that does come up that it's urgent, because sometimes there are urgent things, call my cell phone, send a text message, find, let people know where you're going. And that's why maybe they're not responding to it. And, abrupt Teams message call or something. All right. Good
Yeah,
question.
I think that's so relatable. I
Mhm,
laugh because I feel the same way at 6:30 in the morning with those
mhm.
notifications sometimes because I don't always turn them off. So
Yeah.
I think that'll really resonate with a lot of people, and I think it's such a helpful reminder that boundaries don't have to be dramatic. It could start with just giving yourself that moment, that pause to really think before you're responding. And even when the workday ends, our minds don't always shut off right away. Stress can follow us into the evening, sometimes in our sleep, in our dreams, and then the next day. And my next
Yeah.
question is, what can I do if work stress is starting to spill into my personal life?
Yeah. So stress tends to work both ways, actually, right? Personal to professional and professional into personal. We can't be fully present, right, in one area if we bring a mess with us into the next. So we often carry our stress around. I call it like a backpack, but we don't have to do that. Kind of giving yourself permission to take it off, leave it at the doorstep, kind of is the best thing you can do for yourself. So if you can literally visualize putting it down when you leave the office or the house, right? Leave it right at the front door and say, bye, I'm going to work. Or, at the office, bye, I'm going home. One thing I find really helpful, additionally, is changing my clothes after work. If you're old enough to remember watching Mr. Rogers growing up, he'd come into the house and he'd switch his shoes and his sweater. He transitioned from wherever he was coming from, right, to be with us on the TV. So it really does. It helps us transition into our next role, kind of compartmentalizing the different aspects of our lives. So by doing that, it helps you to keep focused on whatever's kind of coming in front of you.
Yeah. I think that's really relatable because so many people struggle with, mentally leaving work at work, especially those who might work from home. And I know that's
Yeah.
something that actually works really well for me too, is, changing my outfit into something else, kind of like, a reset into the next part of my day. So glad you brought that up. And sometimes, coping and self-care are not enough, and it doesn't mean that you've failed. It just means that you might need a little bit more support. So when is it a good idea to reach out for extra support, and what kind of support or resource options are out there?
Yeah, so your stress level does not need to be a 10 out of 10 to ask for help. We would hope that you don't get that far. And that's, of course, why, the Center for Wellbeing exists, and why there are so many great resources in our communities, and within our employers and such. There are all different forms of support and resources for mental health, and just getting started, really taking the first step, whether it's with a counselor or even just trying a new activity, a yoga class, journaling, those things can really open the doors for your own self-discovery and individual understanding. We all kind of have an underlying theme or problem area that kind of keeps showing up for us throughout our lives. And we all have stress. Taking the step and talking to a counselor about it, no matter how minimal, I assure you, it will feel like a release once you finally let it out, because whatever it is you've kind of been holding on to, right? And the more we hold on to things, the bigger they get and the more stressful and heavy they get. That's when you're going to start feeling those pains in your body. So for those of you working for Geisinger, you can always visit us at the Center for Wellbeing homepage, right there on the SharePoint. We have a drop-down menu across the top labeled resources. And additionally, myself and our whole wellbeing team are happy to discuss any one of your needs at any time. One simple nationwide resource for mental health support is called psychologytoday.com. Can be accessed anywhere. You can find any type of mental health support, whether it's counseling, for therapy, medication management, and you can kind of even navigate through your insurance preference and your need preference right on the screen there. They also have daily journals that you can read, and information about psychology and your own mental health. If you feel your need is more immediate, or somebody in crisis, though, you really can call. It's 988. You can call or text for, that's the suicide and crisis hotline number, and that's across the nation.
Thank you for sharing that. I think, it's also such an important message to take away, that you don't have to wait until things feel like they're unmanageable before you're reaching out for help. So thank you for sharing those resources.
You got it.
And yeah, I think we covered a lot today. I would say I like to always end on a note where the floor is really yours to touch on, Katie, with anything else that maybe we didn't cover, or to remind those on the call of one of the most important things that you want them to take away from today. So really, to wrap us up here, what would you say is your biggest takeaway from the discussion today that you would want everyone to remember?
Yeah. So, you know, just to piggyback, really encapsulate kind of what we shared, our mental health needs just as much care as our medical health, right? So just like we mentioned, you don't need to be a 10 out of 10. You wouldn't wait until you were, having a heart attack to go to the doctor, right? You would have it checked up beforehand. So normalizing, talking about it, releasing the shame, the worry, kind of surrounding the stigma is really the best thing we can do for ourselves. Not only does it open up the doors for us, it opens up the doors for others. And then we save lives that way. Show yourself the same compassion and care that you show others every day, because you're all out there doing the best work for the people in our communities. And you really take a look inside yourself as well, and make sure you're returning it to you. It's what's behind your badge that comes in with you every day. So take care of it.
I love that. Yeah, I think it's a powerful reminder, especially the idea of offering ourselves the same compassion that we would often give to others. So, love that.
Exactly.
So, with that, we covered a lot today, right? Everything from recognizing stress signals to understanding burnout and building small, realistic skills to support mental health. And I just want to emphasize that none of this is about doing it perfectly or fixing everything at once. And mental well being is built in small moments. So, paying attention to how you're feeling, giving yourself permission to pause, and reaching out to support when you need it. I want to thank you all for taking the time to listen in as part of this conversation. And also want to thank you, Katie, for such helpful insights with us. Really loved a lot of the examples and discussion that the insights you gave us today. Thank you.
You're so very welcome. I'm thrilled, to be asked on the call and to be sharing information about mental health. It's my passion, and so please, by all means, call if any of you can call if you need anything.
Love that. Awesome. So we will wrap up today. If there is any questions or feedback, feel free to either put them in the Q&A. Even if it comes at a later time, you can always come back to this, plug a question in there, and we can always, get back to any questions that you might have specifically. Or if you feel more comfortable, you could always email our wellness email. So it's wellness@geisinger.edu. And if you have any questions specifically for Katie, we could shift them off to her. But with that being said, I don't see anything in the Q&A. So I think we are all good to wrap up. So don't forget to join us next month. We'll be talking more about tips on boosting motivation and managing your time using different tools and technology to stay active despite a packed schedule. So a lot of great stuff there, kind of shifting gears from, mental well-being to more physical activity. But thank you so much, Katie. And thank you, everyone else. I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Have a great one. Thanks.
See you guys.